In a cozy coffee shop nestled on the corner of a bustling street in New York City, Dr. Felix Wainwright had just discovered the ultimate way to ruin a perfectly good history book. Balancing a steaming cup of coffee in one hand and a stack of historical tomes in the other, he leaned over the table, squinting at the text with the intensity of a man staring down an existential crisis. "Why did they even put the Boston Tea Party in this section?" he muttered to himself. What kind of a historian tries to learn about taxation without representation over a cup of herbal tea? Come on, it's practically a crime against history. Just then, disaster struck. His elbow knocked the cup, sending a torrent of dark liquid cascading over the pages. Time slowed down as he lunged to save the book, his reflexes kicking in like a cat in a laser pointer duel. To his astonishment, he snatched the cup mid-air, but it was too late. The coffee seeped into the pages, and with it, the entirety of American history as he knew it. The bizarre twist came moments later when he realized he had somehow been transported back to the exact moment before the spill. Startled, he looked around, half expecting a hidden camera crew to jump out and announce, "Surprise! You've been pranked." But instead, there was only the old man at the adjacent table, eyebrows raised, clearly judging his lack of coordination. "Just practicing for my future as a barista," Felix called out, a nervous grin plastered across his face. As he turned back to his table, he spotted the device nestled in the pages of his soggy history book. It was a small, sleek contraption that hummed with an almost imperceptible energy. Curious, he picked it up, only for a flurry of images to flood his mind, famous events, people he'd only read about, and a flickering glimpse of something otherworldly. He blinked and shook his head. This must be some kind of malfunction. Or perhaps an elaborate metaphor for my life? Always a mess but somehow still functional. Fueled by a mix of caffeine and curiosity, Felix set to work. He knew he had to understand this device. Little did he know, it was just the beginning of a wild adventure that would change the course of history itself. Weeks passed, filled with late nights and coffee-fueled brainstorming sessions. Felix became obsessed with the device. He discovered that it was a time manipulator, an extraordinary gadget capable of opening rifts in time. However, there was a catch. It seemed to be connected to a series of disturbances in the timeline itself. Historical figures were behaving oddly, and Felix needed to find out why. One evening, in his cluttered lab, he gathered his colleagues, who were starting to worry about his sanity. "Guys," he said, gesturing animatedly to the device that now occupied the center of the table, "we have to talk about the coffee machine. Oh, I mean, this. Look, it's a time machine, and we need to figure out how to use it before we lose our grasp on reality." Felix, Lila, a sharp-witted historian with a flair for sarcasm, interjected, "Last time I checked, coffee machines don't rearrange history. Maybe it's time for a little break from the caffeine?" But Felix was undeterred. He scrolled through his research notes, his eyes lighting up with excitement. "No, really. Remember when Lincoln started talking like he was auditioning for a rap battle? That wasn't just me having a caffeine-induced hallucination." Milo, the resident conspiracy theorist, perked up. "Oh, I totally remember. I thought it was a new Netflix documentary. Aliens, man. They're messing with our history to prepare for their invasion." Or, Rita, the no-nonsense engineer, chimed in, "Maybe we're just overreacting. But I'm intrigued. If it's real, we might be able to stop them." "Exactly," Felix exclaimed, his excitement infectious. "We need to assemble a team and travel through time to put things right. What do you say?" They exchanged glances, a mixture of skepticism and intrigue painted across their faces. Finally, Lila shrugged. Fine. Let's save history from the coffee gods, or whatever this is. And so began their preparation for a time-traveling escapade, the likes of which no one had ever imagined. The following day, they gathered in Felix's lab, an explosion of papers, gadgets, and the occasional snack strewn across the floor. First stop, Felix announced, is the 1960s. We'll investigate the famous Woodstock Festival. Something tells me that was one wild party, and I need to confirm if my hypothesis about time manipulation is correct. The team scrambled to discuss strategy, their banter ranging from historical trivia to outright nonsense. Okay, but if we meet any of the Beatles, I'm totally asking them about their thoughts on pineapple on pizza, Milo declared, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Felix sighed, shaking his head with a chuckle. Let's focus, team. We can't just go altering timelines for the sake of pizza toppings. As they finalized their plan, Felix couldn't shake the feeling that they were in way over their heads. But the thrill of adventure surged through him like a jolt of caffeine. Once the device was calibrated, they gathered around it, a collective breath held in anticipation. The air crackled with energy as Felix activated the machine. Here goes nothing, he shouted, hitting the button. In an instant, the world around them blurred, colors swirling into a dizzying vortex. Felix felt a sensation like being pulled through a straw, and then, crack. They landed on a field, the unmistakable sound of music ringing in their ears. They had arrived at Woodstock, only to find chaos unfolding before them. Hippies danced wildly, a colorful array of tie-dye swirling against the backdrop of a blue sky. But something was off, the music warped strangely, lyrics blending into nonsensical chants about aliens and coffee. Did we land in a time warp or a bizarre alternate reality? Lila asked, her brow furrowed. No idea, Felix replied, scanning the scene. But we've got to blend in and figure out what's going on. With each step they took into the crowd, the oddities of the timeline became more apparent. A man dressed as Abraham Lincoln was debating a giant inflatable alien about the merits of peace and love. It was as if history had thrown a party and forgotten the guest list. Okay, this is officially the weirdest thing I've ever seen, Milo whispered, his eyes wide. As they made their way through the crowd, Felix noticed something peculiar. A group of aliens disguised as famous musicians were trying to disrupt the festival. With every song they played, it seemed they were planting seeds of confusion into the minds of the attendees. We need to stop them, Felix shouted, urgency lacing his voice. If they can manipulate these events, the entire course of history could change. The team sprang into action, weaving through the throngs of people, dodging frisbees and peace signs. Lila, ever the history buff, recognized the moment they needed to intervene. They're about to hijack the stage. Felix nodded, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Let's go. They rushed toward the stage just as the aliens were about to take over, their instruments buzzing with an eerie glow. The crowd was entranced, swaying mindlessly, oblivious to the threat at hand. Felix reached into his backpack, pulling out the time device. Hey, extraterrestrial party crashers, he yelled, brandishing the gadget. How about a little history lesson? The aliens turned, their expressions a mix of surprise and confusion. Felix felt a wave of confidence surge through him. You can't just come here and mess with the timeline. This festival is about peace, love, and, he hesitated, glancing at Milo, who nodded enthusiastically, great music. With that, the stage erupted into a showdown of musical proportions. Felix activated the device, sending a burst of energy into the air, causing the aliens' instruments to malfunction spectacularly. The crowd snapped out of their stupor, gasping at the sight before them. "What's happening?" a woman shouted, her flower crown slipping askew. "Don't worry. Just some good old-fashioned time-traveling heroics," Felix yelled, his voice booming over the chaos. As the aliens scrambled, trying to regain control of their instruments, Felix and his team coordinated a plan. They grabbed microphones, turning the tide in their favor, launching into an improvised song about friendship, unity, and the importance of keeping history intact. The crowd joined in, clapping and singing, the infectious spirit of the festival rekindling in their hearts. The aliens, overwhelmed by the positive energy, retreated, their plans thwarted. "Take that, history hijackers!" Felix cheered, feeling an exhilarating sense of accomplishment. With the stage back under control, the team high-fived, breathless and giddy. "Okay, we did it. But we still have 2 more timelines to fix," Lila reminded them, excitement bubbling in her voice. Felix grinned, the thrill of adventure still pulsing through him. "Let's keep going. Next stop, the moon landing." As they activated the device again, Felix couldn't help but think that this time-traveling gig might just be the best decision he ever made, even if it started with a coffee spill. As the swirling colors of the time vortex enveloped them once more, Felix's heart raced with a mix of excitement and anxiety. He could hardly believe they had successfully thwarted the alien interference at Woodstock, but the pressure was on. They had 2 more critical moments in history to protect, and time was ticking away. When the kaleidoscope of light faded, they landed with a soft thud on the surface of the moon. The unmistakable view of Earth hung like a blue marble against the starry blackness. Felix adjusted his helmet, the sensation of weightlessness making him giddy. He could hardly contain his enthusiasm. "We made it. The moon landing, baby. Can you believe this?" Lila marveled, her voice muffled but unmistakably filled with awe. "It's just us and Neil Armstrong." But as they took in their surroundings, Felix's elation quickly turned to confusion. The moon's surface was littered with strange equipment and, oddly, a large inflatable alien spaceship hovering nearby, glowing with garish neon lights. A group of astronauts was gathered, their movements jerky, as if they were under some sort of spell. Guys," Milo whispered, pointing. "Those are definitely not the original Apollo 11 crew." "No kidding," Rita replied, squinting at the scene. "They've been replaced by aliens." Felix's mind raced. "We need to get closer and find out what's happening. If they're taking over this event, the implications for history could be catastrophic." As they floated cautiously toward the astronauts, the alien version of Neil Armstrong was speaking into a microphone, his voice modulated and oddly upbeat. "One small step for an alien, one giant leap for intergalactic domination." The original crew members were huddled nearby, their expressions dazed and confused. It was clear they were under some sort of influence. Felix motioned for his team to spread out, each of them trying to come up with a plan to disrupt the alien scheme. "Rita, do you think you can hack into their system?" Felix asked, his eyes darting around for any semblance of technology that looked hackable. "Give me a minute," she replied, her fingers deftly working over her portable gadget. "If I can just access their frequency, I might be able to reverse the signal that's controlling the astronauts." Meanwhile, Lila and Milo positioned themselves behind a rock formation, peering out at the scene. "I can't believe this is happening," Milo said, shaking his head in disbelief. The aliens are literally stealing one of humanity's biggest achievements. Focus, Milo. Lila snapped. We need to figure out how to get the real astronauts back in charge. If we can break the aliens' hold, we might be able to restore the timeline. Just then, Felix spotted an unusual energy beam emanating from the inflatable spaceship. That's it. If we can disable that beam, we might free the crew. Right. I'll distract them, Lila said, determination sparking in her eyes. She grabbed a moon rock and hurled it toward the aliens. Hey! Look over here, she shouted, her voice carrying in the low gravity. As the aliens turned, surprised by the commotion, Felix seized the moment. Now, Rita. Rita hit a few buttons on her device, and a series of sparks flew from it. The aliens' communication system crackled with feedback, and suddenly, the control they held over the astronauts faltered. The Real Neil Armstrong, blinking and bewildered, regained his composure. What's happening? Who are you? He called, catching sight of Felix and the team. Just your friendly neighborhood time travelers. We're here to help. Felix shouted, urging the astronauts to join them. With their combined efforts, they rushed toward the energy beam, but the aliens quickly regrouped, their leader squawking orders. Stop them. They're interfering with our mission. In the chaos, Felix lunged forward, slamming the time device against the control panel of the spaceship. The device flared to life, sending a wave of energy surging through the area. The aliens screamed in dismay as their equipment sparked and short-circuited. Let's go! Felix shouted, and with a swift motion, he directed the device to create a feedback loop. The beam recoiled, and with a flash, the aliens were zapped back to their inflatable spaceship, which began deflating dramatically. With the energy beam dismantled, the astronauts shook off the last remnants of confusion. Thanks for the assist, Armstrong said, regaining his confidence. Now, let's show these intergalactic goofballs who's boss. As the remaining aliens scrambled to escape, the astronauts joined Felix's team, creating a united front against the intruders. Together, they advanced, the moon's surface tremoring with the combined determination of human ingenuity and a desperate desire to preserve history. Felix grinned as he watched the original Apollo crew reclaim their place. It's like the ultimate reboot of the moon landing. With one final push, the aliens scrambled back into their spaceship, attempting to escape through a portal. But Felix was ready. He activated the time device once more, locking onto the coordinates of the alien craft. Not so fast, he yelled, hitting the button as a flash of light enveloped the area. With a last, disgruntled yelp, the aliens disappeared, their spaceship collapsing into a heap of deflated plastic on the lunar surface. We did it! Milo cheered, throwing his arms up in victory. Can you believe it? The moon landing is safe. Felix, feeling the exhilaration wash over him, nodded. We've managed to save two pivotal moments in history. What's next? The team shared triumphant smiles, their energy renewed as they prepared to leap through time once more. The device activated, and they were drawn back into the vortex. When the world settled around them again, they found themselves standing in front of the Berlin Wall, an imposing structure that represented division and struggle. The air was thick with tension as they realized this moment would be more difficult than the last two. The wall loomed over them, a stark reminder of the challenges they faced. Voices could be heard, some chanting for freedom while others shouted in anger. Felix's heart raced at the thought of what could happen if they didn't intervene in time. Okay, we need a plan, Felix said, scanning the area. It looks like tensions are high here, and if the aliens are involved, they might be trying to manipulate public sentiment. Let's split up, Lila suggested, her voice steady. "Milo and I can try to blend in with the crowd and gather intel. Felix, you and Rita can look for the alien presence. Maybe they've set up some sort of interference point." "Right. Let's do it." Felix agreed, determination burning in his chest. As they moved through the throng of people, the shouts and chants grew louder. Felix felt a chill run down his spine as he caught sight of a group of aliens disguised as government officials, stirring up confusion and division among the protesters. "Look at that," Felix whispered to Rita, gesturing discreetly. "We need to get closer." Rita nodded, her engineer's mind already racing through potential ways to sabotage the aliens' plan. "If we can expose them, maybe the crowd will realize what's happening." Felix agreed. "Let's find a way to broadcast the truth." As they crept closer, the alien officials began to address the crowd, their words distorted and persuasive, inciting fear and chaos. Felix could feel the tension in the air, the desperation of the people longing for change, and the alien presence seeking to exploit that longing. "Rita, do you think you can hack into their communication?" Felix whispered urgently. "I'll need a few minutes," she replied, focusing intently on her device. "If I can access their frequency, I can turn the crowd against them." With the plan set, Felix moved toward the front lines, heart pounding as he took a deep breath. He had to act quickly. "Hey," he shouted, drawing attention to himself. "These people are not who they claim to be." The crowd turned, eyes wide with surprise. Felix pressed on. "They're manipulating us. You can't let them divide us." Just as he spoke, Rita succeeded in accessing the alien communication. A loud crackling noise echoed through the air, and suddenly, the alien's distorted voice was replaced by a booming message. "Attention! The truth is," before they could finish, the crowd erupted into a frenzy. People were shouting, trying to understand the revelation. The aliens, realizing their cover was blown, began to panic. Felix seized the moment. "This is our chance. Rally together. We have to show them we won't be divided." The crowd, energized by his words, began to chant for unity, their voices echoing through the streets. "Freedom. Unity. Together." With their plan unraveling, the aliens scrambled to regain control. But Felix's heart swelled as he saw the determination in the faces around him. It was a moment of collective power, and it fueled his resolve. "Now, Rita. Let's finish this." Felix shouted, urging her to act. She pressed a few buttons on her device, and a surge of energy rippled through the air. The aliens faltered, their forms flickering as they struggled against the energy. In one swift motion, Felix activated the time device once more. "You can't manipulate us anymore." With a brilliant flash, the aliens were caught in a time loop, swirling back into the void from which they came. The crowd erupted into cheers, their spirits lifted as they celebrated their victory over the forces that sought to divide them. As Felix and his team stood among the jubilant crowd, he couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. "We did it. We saved history." The cheers echoed around them, a chorus of voices united in celebration. They had fought against impossible odds, and together, they had triumphed. Felix glanced at his team, their faces beaming with joy. "I can't believe we actually pulled it off. From Woodstock to the moon to the Berlin Wall, we've made history together." As they embraced in a group hug, the realization hit him: this journey had changed them all. They weren't just time travelers anymore, they were guardians of history, protectors of the moments that shaped humanity. With their spirits high, they activated the device one last time, ready to return to their own timeline. As the swirling colors enveloped them, Felix couldn't help but chuckle. "Next time, let's avoid coffee spills, okay?" he joked, earning laughter from his friends, and as they faded back into their own time, Felix knew this was only the beginning of their adventures together. With the power to traverse time and the bond they'd forged, who knew what other wild escapades awaited them? When the world settled around them once more, they found themselves back in the coffee shop, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. Felix looked around, a grin spreading across his face. "Well, we might have changed the course of history, but I think I still need my coffee fix." Milo laughed. "I think I'll pass, just in case history repeats itself." As they settled back into their usual routine, Felix glanced at the history book, now miraculously dry and intact on the table. He picked it up, flipping through the pages with renewed appreciation. "Here's to making history," he said, raising his coffee cup in a toast. "And to the adventures still to come." And with that, the team shared a laugh, their spirits bright, knowing they would be ready for whatever came next. They were time travelers, after all, and the past was just the beginning of their extraordinary journey.